Hi and welcome back to the channel. I'm David, and this episode, it's going to be one of the wet episodes. I believe I'll post it as 29. And what it's going to be is making a heavy-duty 220 volt extension cord. So I've got on one side of my shop over here, I've got 220 plugs for my welder and my plasma cutter, and just the way things are working out. I mean, I've always had this left over from when I did my wiring, so now I just want to go ahead and make an extension cord out of it. That way I can actually, instead of having a uber expensive 30 or 25 foot long welding lead for the MIG, I figure this way I can just move the machine out a little bit, be able to weld on that side of the shop. So that's what this one's about. Things that we're going to do to make sure that we do this right. Again, like most of my other wiring videos, I use a multimeter. Make sure that when it's all said and done, I'm getting the right voltages off of this equipment. Some heavy duty electrical tape. I'm sure it says somewhere in there about what it's good for. Good for the situation. Other tools, I got a good flathead, Phillips screwdriver, knife to cut the cable, and of course the cable that you've seen. So let me bring you in. We're going to go ahead and just start going to town on this. I guess first things first, I'm going to split the cable open. So let's bring you in. Alright, so like I say, first thing I want to do is I need to expose some of these the individual wires in this cable. So I'm just going to go ahead, and I can see in there, you can see that it's got the cardboard insulation. So you want to try and make your cut on that so that you're not cutting through the other wire on accident. And then you're just going to try and follow it down. It does kind of, I mean, with this outside cable, it's soft enough you can probably just cut like 2/3 of the way through it and then stretch it the rest of the way. But one thing you want to be conscious of is that it's a twisted one, so it's not like you can't just cut straight down the seam. It twists as the cables inside and the wires inside are twisting through the sheath. So you just got to be able to cut it accordingly to keep following this insulation. So before I get too carried away with that, two other things you're going to need. You're going to make sure that you get both the correct receptacles and plugs. This one, it's the 6-30 or 6-50P. I'm going to be wiring a 6-50P, which is this one right here. I'm sorry, it's that one there. And 250 volts. And of course the matching side to it. The reason why I'm just going to go ahead and get these out right now is I don't really want to pull off too much of this if I don't have to. So just go ahead and get an idea of what we need. Alright, so it's pretty clear your ground piece can only go through one direction, so that one's pretty straightforward. And I may end up taking these out when I wire it. I'm just getting it all put together first. And even though you're going to need the short one, I guess there's 3 of them provided. If we were welding, or I'm sorry, if we were wiring up the 30 amp, then I would be using 2 of these. If I'm wiring up the 50 amp, then I use the other 2. So whichever one you happen to be wiring, you just make sure that you get the correct one. So because this is a 50 amp, and you can see it takes the short one. Also, configuration wise on this piece, the taller slot won't accept the wider one. That's what the outside of this plug will end up being like. So I'm going to go ahead with this one and call that it is about where I need it to be. So I'm going to do a kind of a lighter cut. I don't want to go through and damage the other wires. So on this insulation, and then I can peel it away. So there's some other stuff in here, like this point, it's a good time you can get rid of the cardboard insulation between the wires. Conductor, so like I say, I'm not going to need the white one. So it's going to eventually get taped off and tucked away or something. But these 3, I'm going to need those ones, so I'm going to go ahead and size it up, make sure that I got plenty to get where I want. So I want my green one to be able to reach up there, and then I'm going to end up trimming my 2 hot leads. My red and my black are my hot leads, and my green is my ground. So those are the 3 that I'm going to end up stripping some wire off of. And so very carefully, if you don't have an actual wire trimmer that's long enough to do this, you can very carefully do it with a knife. And I mean, you don't need a whole lot exposed, like that's maybe a 1/2 inch. And what it is, it's enough to fully engage the contact when you screw it down on this and not leave any more exposed that could possibly come back and arc out on any of these. So, alright, so although tin snips are not the proper tool for this, they work well in this heavier gauge wire. So just trim through all those fine strands. They work very well for that. Now there's not enough room, once I get this all done, there's not going to be enough room inside of this for a wire nut on this end. Probably on the get a very heavy amount of tape. So just go ahead and get you a little bit. So as you can see, there's just no room inside this. So the white one's going to get a good amount of tape on it. And really it is just so that it doesn't, for whatever reason, get some sort of stray current in there. It should never have any current whatsoever, regardless. So I've trimmed my conductors a little bit shorter than my ground so that they work well in this. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say I don't really care which one of my hot conductors goes on which leg. It really doesn't matter. unless you're really diagnosing some things. But for this application, not terribly concerned. All that really matters is your two hot legs on one end of the plug are the same two hot ends on the other end of the plug. Alright, so at this point it kind of looks ugly, but that's all we got going on is we've got the conductors all wired in there. So then we go back and we feed them through accordingly where they need to go. And then we put this as the cable strain relief on right here. And for those of you wondering what 6-50 is, what is that really referring to? I mean, it's really it's just 6 is the gauge wire that you use for wiring the plug, and then 50 is that it's rated for 50 amps. So pretty straightforward, I'd say. So this piece, it's got all those grooves in it. It's intended that it'll seat on these, and it'll help lock it in where they need to be. And that'll do your final alignment on your plug. I'll tell you, on these 221s, it's always been my experience, well, at least on the 50 amp, that the male portion of the extension cord is always the hardest. So just there's no room for anything, no extra wire or anything. So there you've got one end done, and I think before I test it, I'm going to go ahead and wire the other end just so I know the wires aren't near each other. So I'm going to go ahead and skip the portion of sheathing this or taking all this off because, well, you've seen it. Alright, so having taken the box off, of course all the parts spill out on the table here, but the important thing, I just want to show you, this is just a regular old metal knockout. I'm going to be using the bottom, not the back, and I want the smaller one, so I'm going to pry in this direction. So that's kind of how I'm getting an idea for what length I need, and then I'm going to go ahead and trim this piece off accordingly. This tab right here goes inside that slot over here, and that just acts as like a little lock, so I got to get that over there somehow. Here we go. And so it locks it in there, and that's what provides the clamping force as you screw down. That's providing the force with this screw. So it's important to get that in. And I think on most of these larger receptacles or plugs, whatever you want to call them, that's the way I've seen that done. So and it's just a kind of a rinse and repeat on the other side here. Goodness, if you thought a flathead or straight was hard to do in the first place, try doing it while looking at the camera. Alright, so I'm going to put the cable strain relief on. I'm going to make sure that when I tighten it up, I'm actually doing what its only job really is that there's no strain on the wires inside, so the wires don't pull out from your lugs. Before I tighten those up, I'm going to go ahead and put these two set screws, or the little dinky things, in. I won't be able to get past this otherwise. Once again, I'm trying to get a little bit of force in towards the switch on this, or in, I mean not switch, but a receptacle, just so that it is actually providing a little bit of relief. And you go about as tight as, it's kind of a gut check. I mean, you don't want, it's got these two little, this indent on both sides. That indent right there is on both sides, and that's it's crimping down. I mean, you want it to be able to hold, but you don't want it to ever be in danger of going through this sheath, the cable. We call that good. That's included if you're going to mount it to a wall or something, but since this is not a wall mount, this is the only screw that's left here, and it just holds the two halves together. Now we get to test it. Alright, so got her plugged in and over on the receptacle on that end, and didn't blow a fuse, so no big deal there. And now on this end I've got my AC voltage set to the 500 volt setting, and once more from the ground side to any of these should be the 120. And then to the two of them should be reading that 240, 245 or whatever. So there we have it. One extension cord for 50 amp 220. So I'd like to just once more really beat down on you guys that this is kind of a do it at your own risk type thing. I'm sure most of you, any new viewers, I'm not a licensed electrician or an electrician by trade or anything. I'm a jack of all trades. My trade, I'm a welding engineer, and a long time ago I decided if I'm going to be messing with welders and wiring shops and stuff, that I need to know how to do it. So that's me passing this information on to you guys. But if you're not at all comfortable, by all means, I recommend that you get somebody who is trained or certified to do this for you if you're not comfortable doing it yourself. That being said, I think if you're watching this video, it's because you are confident doing it yourself and you just need a little bit of guidance. So thanks for watching, and leave comments, thumbs up if you liked the video, if you thought that it was useful, and I appreciate it.